So what soil should you buy? Which brand? I've been asked this a lot. So instead of telling you which brand, because there's so many brands out there in different areas and stuff, and some brands are just not being used anymore, being produced anymore, I'm just going to tell you how to look at the label and buy the correct type of soil. Let's get to it. Hey, welcome to another video, and in this video we're going to talk about how to buy soil for your planted tank. Now, I've been asked this question a lot, which brand to get, and a lot of people asking me which brand that I use, and they see me using it on the video, but they can't find it anymore because it's not being produced anymore, or it can't be bought in some certain states and stuff like that. So instead of telling you which brand, I'm just going to teach you how to read the label so you get the correct type of soil for your tank and what not to get. But before you do that, hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed to this channel already. Hit that like button if this video helps you out in any way. So how does that saying go? Give a person a fish, feed them for a day. Teach them how to fish, feed them for the rest of their lives. Oh, they'll become a professional bass fisherman and win tons of trophy and tons of money, and you wouldn't have to worry about food in the first place. But I digress. So we're going to talk about some information about soil itself, and then we're going to go and look at some of the bags and the labels that I found at my big box store. So why does it work well? Well, I will be covering this part in my nutrient series, which will pop up if I've already made it by the time you're watching this video. But if not, basically it feeds the nutrients to the plants by its roots. It's usually the main source. Now with aquatic plants, it feeds nutrients to the leaves and stems as well, but most of the time the main source comes from the roots. So when it comes to soil and gardening and stuff, we provide our plants, our flowers, our vegetables or whatever with the three main macronutrients that all plants need. Now there's micronutrients as well, but not all of it or some of it is included in the soil. It depends on the manufacturer, but we'll get to that later. So these three nutrients is nitrogen, phosphates, and potassium, also known as NPK. Now that's not Neil Patrick Harris, that's NPH, but sorry, again, I digress. Now because these are the three major nutrients that all plants need to grow, that's what the manufacturers do when they create soil. That's what mostly is in the soil that you buy from these big box stores or these gardening centers. But more about nutrients and nutrient series, this is just important to know. NPK is what you're going to get from the soil mainly. Now you see these ratio numbers printed on the label. Now this tells you how much of the three nutrients are in the soil itself. Okay, the first number is for nitrogen, the second number is for phosphates, and the third number is for potassium. Now it could be listed as a simple ratio, or it could be listed as a percentage ratio like this. All right, so that's important to know when you're looking at the label. Now there's two key words you need to know here, soluble and insoluble. Soluble means that the nutrients are released right away, so it'll be released in the first few weeks and the plant's uptake and stuff like that. This is what happens when you use soil and then you get ammonia spikes when you first do the planted tank. Okay, and that's not what we're looking for. In soil, we're looking for insoluble nutrients. Insoluble nutrients means that the nutrient is released over time, giving it to the plants to feed on in months and maybe years. And that's what we're mainly looking for in soil. Okay, now let's talk about the big elephant in the room, organic versus non-organic. And this is a misnomer, it's a marketing term and stuff like that, and make it sound really important and stuff. It kind of is, it kind of isn't, but when it comes to soil, people are getting it confused. Now in this case, organic means that there's stuff in the soil that used to be living or is currently living, microorganisms, microbes or whatever. The fertilizer comes from animal droppings and stuff like that. That's pretty simple to understand. What the harder part to understand is the non-organic part. So the inorganic part is the trickier part, and some people think it's bad. It's not really bad, I'll explain. You can think of inorganic in two categories, okay? Man-made chemicals that are in the soil, as well as man-made compounds that are in the soil. Man-made compounds are usually stuff that helps maintain the water retention in soil, which it doesn't matter for us because we're putting it into a box of water. But they do sometimes put other stuff that's man-made compounds into the soil to do certain functions. Now the second category was the man-made chemicals and stuff they put into the soil, which is usually the nitrogens, stuff like that. Now we actually use inorganic soil or inorganic substrate in our aquariums. You know this very well. There are brands like 88 Aqua Soil or Contra Soil or any of the soil that they actually bake the nutrients into the soil so that it'll slowly release in the tank. That is inorganic or non-organic substrate. So when it comes to the second category, which is like man-made chemicals or whatever, we do that already. A lot of us planted tank enthusiasts do that by using stuff like sea chem trace and stuff. We're putting artificial chemicals into the tank itself. So when it comes to non-organic soil, it doesn't mean it's bad. Case in point is that some organic soils that we have labeled out there and that we buy actually have man-made chemicals in it as well. So it's not completely organic. Now, just because it says organic on the bag itself doesn't mean that you should just pick it up and buy it right away. So ignore the marketing hype. We got to look at the label and got to know what's inside the soil itself. Another term you hear is polymer coating. Now, if you know what that means, usually it's using paint and stuff that you paint on the wall. It would sound bad, right? It's basically plastic that's wrapped around nutrients that is supposed to help with slow releasing into the environment or into the soil itself. Now, is polymer coated stuff bad? Now, I can't really be sure. I'm not a chemist and there's actually arguments about it, but this polymer coating stuff is used in stress coat and stuff. It's also used in what I make do-it-yourself fruit tabs with Osmocoat. It's just basically polymer coated nutrients that's timed so that it's released slowly. Now, the other problem with polymer coated stuff is it really depends on temperature and the makeup of the soil and stuff that makes it last long for slow releasing, if that makes any sense. So what I would suggest is if you have a problem with it or if you're worried about it, then try to steer clear of any polymer coated type of stuff that might be in the soil. Now, some people ask me about using topsoil versus potting or gardening soil. The problem with topsoil, and it still has nutrients and stuff, the problem with topsoil, however, is that this soil is sourced from the top 6 to 8 inches in the field. Now, the problem is that you're not entirely sure if that field has been coated with pesticides. And that's one of the main reasons why I don't normally suggest topsoil. Now, I have a bag of topsoil here, which I use for my tarantulas, but that's about it. I do not put it in my fish tanks. So let's take a look at those brands of soil that I found in my big box store. And we're going to read the label and I'm going to tell you exactly what's good or what's bad and what you should be looking for when you're buying your brand of soil. So the first brand we're going to talk about is the one that you see me using in my videos, which is the Macronutrients Organic Potting Soil or Potting Mix. And this is what it looks like, but let's take a look at the label itself. Now, these are the main things that you're going to look for on the label. How much NPK it has, as well as what kind of fertilizer it has in the soil, as well as what other weird compounds that they might have in it, either man-made or organic stuff. So in this brand, we see that they use poultry litter as the fertilizer, and then they add some peat moss in, which helps with water retention, but we don't really have to worry about that in our tank. But what peat does help in our tank is that it softens the water. So keep in mind, when you see peat moss on the label, there might be a chance that it will soften your water. Now, when we look at the labels, you got 0.10%, 0.05%, 0.05%. So 0.10% for nitrogen, 0.05% for phosphates, and 0.05% for potassium. Now, when you look at the nitrogen, it breaks down even further, okay? You have 0.002 ammoniacal, I can't pronounce that, and then 0.001 soluble nitrogen, and then 0.098 insoluble. 0.098 insoluble is what we're mainly looking for. The 0.001 soluble nitrogen is going to leach into the water and go away in a week or two. Okay, the 0.02 ammoniacal is really bad for us, but it's only 0.002, so the concentration is very small, so we don't have to worry about it too much. It should be all gone by the time we're ready to put fish in our tank. And then finally, we have phosphates and potassium, which is at 0.05%, and this is not insoluble. This is soluble, so it will most likely go away in a month or two, or maybe it might last a little longer. You never know, but those nutrients are there for the beginning stages of your plants. So this is the soil that you mainly see me use in my videos. Now, they don't make it anymore for some weird reason, or they don't sell it in some states. I know they don't sell it in California, or they ship it to California, for some reason. So I have to look for alternatives. So using this as a base gets you started. All right, the next brand we'll look at is the Kellogg Organic Native Smart. Now this one is probably the next best thing next to the Miracle-Gro that we just saw. So this is probably the closest thing. So let's take a look at the label. First of all, for the fertilizer, they use poultry manure and feather meal. Okay, and what's interesting is they use ferrous sulfate. Ferrous sulfate is basically iron for your plants. Okay, that's a good thing. The non-good thing is that it's soluble, so it won't stay that long, but at least it'll help jumpstart your plants with some iron. Nitrogen is 0.30%, phosphate is 0.10%, and potassium is 0.10%. So while you look down and break up the nitrogen, you got 0.01 ammonium nitrate, which is good. Okay, again, ammonium nitrate is bad for your tank and bad for your fish, but it'll go away by the time your tank is cycled. 0.04 for other solubles, meaning that it will disappear over a few weeks or whatever after your plant chews it up. And you got 0.25 insoluble. So if you look at the ingredients here, this is actually might be way better than the Miracle-Gro that we looked before, because it has a lot more insoluble nitrogen available for your plants. So it has a lot more that's going to slowly give to your plants over time, a longer period of time, hopefully. Because it's the way they do the makeup of the soil. Usually, if it means it has more, it doesn't always usually mean it'll last longer. It could be mean it'll just release a lot more in that short period of time. Now, the only real way to know is basically to try it out, but we know that this is a brand that we can actually use for a tank. Might be a lot more nitrogen than the Miracle-Gro that we're looking at before, but it just might work. We just have to watch out for too much nitrogen in the tank. Now the next brand we're going to talk about is a good example of a non-organic soil, and this is the Vigoro all-purpose garden soil. I believe that's what it's called. So let's take a look at this. So what you see here is that there's no organic fertilizers listed. It's only saying that it's derived from polymer-coated chemicals. Okay, and as you can see here, a portion of the NPK sources are coated to provide slow release. So that means that it's not organic. So this is all basically man-made chemical or nutrients put into like little pellets into kind of a soil-based kind of thing and polymer coated so that it does slow release. Okay, let's take a look at the stats really quick. As you can see here, nitrogen is 0.05%, but 0.3% of that is ammonium nitrate, which is the bad stuff, which leaches out and disappears after the tank is cycled. The interesting thing here is the 0.02 nitrate nitrogen that it's giving off from these chemicals that's baked into this soil or whatever you want to call it. And it's not that much. So right there, as you can tell, we're not looking at a very good amount of fertilizers to work with in the first place. And of course, you got the phosphates and the potassium at 0.05%, which is soluble, meaning that it will only stay in your tank for a short period of time because it's quick releasing and will disappear. Now the problem with this brand here is because it's polymer coated, we're not exactly sure how long or how slow it's going to release these nutrients or how long it's going to last in it. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's not organic. There's no beneficial microorganisms to help your tank grow and prosper. So this is one of those brands that I look at and say, well, this is not going to work for me. It's not going to work for what we're doing. Maybe it'll work for supplementing plant in a pot or something like that, but that's pretty much where you're going to get the most out of this soil. The last one I actually really want to look at and want to choose here because this soil really has tons of stuff going on with it. It's called the Black Magic Potting Soil or whatever. Now they have different brands, aquaponic stuff as well, but we're going to look at the soil because that's what we're talking about, the soil. Now let's take a look at the fertilizers that they have here. Earthworm casting, bat guano, feather meal, bone meal, blood meal, kelp meal, and some poly-coated synthetics. So basically it means that there's non-organic compounds in this organic soil. And then of course you got the sulfate of potash, which is what's giving your plants potassium. And yes, you read it, bat guano. Too soon? Okay, that aside, let's take a look at the stats. Nitrogen is 0.036%, nice. 0.03 of it is the ammonium nitrates, which is the bad stuff, goes away. 0.05 nitrate nitro, which is nitrogen basically being leached out in the beginning. And then the 0.28 insoluble. That's 0.28. That's a lot. So this is what really piques my interest is I'm going to get a bag of this stuff and see how long it'll last, how fast the slow release of the nitrogen is going to last in the soil itself. It'd be a really cool video, I guess, to make later, but it's going to take time to do. Now here's the other interesting thing that it stands out from the other types of soil. For the phosphates at 0.09%, which of course gets released right away, and then you got the potassium at 0.23%. That's a lot, right? But unfortunately soluble, so it goes away, but wonder how well it will do for your plants, at least for the initial stage of the setup of the tank. And just offshoot, it has calcium in it, so it might harden the water, and it also has magnesium in it, 0.007% of magnesium, which also helps plants. It's micronutrients for plants. So when you look at this brand of soil, it seems it has a lot of stuff going on, but a lot of stuff might be good or might be bad. You know, sometimes a lot of something isn't really good. So the only way to do this is to actually test it out. So that's one thing I want to test. But that's one thing I wanted to put in this video is that you see that this soil, this brand of soil, has tons of things going for it, as opposed to the Miracle-Gro that we looked at or the Kellogg brand that we looked at. So see, that's basically it. I hope you understand that's what you're going to be looking at in the label itself. If it has anything weird in it, don't get it, right? Because if it has really weird compounds in it that, you know, helps retain water or does some really other weird stuff, you probably don't want that in your water where you have fishes. But you have your baseline to go with. This is what you'll be looking for on the labels in the bag itself. So where to go next? Well, you can check out the soil setup guide that I have down here, or you can check out the maintenance and setup tips I have right after you set up the tank on how to maintain it, or check out the playlist over here. Oh, sorry, where am I pointing here? Over here. And of course, if you haven't subscribe here and hit that like button if this video helped you in any way. I will see you in the next video. Bye.